We all know that every car has a story, but some stories run a lot deeper than others. Well, the story of this 1971 Pantera behind me will take you on a journey with Jessica Gray and her father. And when you hear her tell it, you'll understand exactly why it's so wonderful.
My name is Jessica Gray. We are here for the 1971 DeTomaso Pantera. It's been in our family since 1994. My dad was the original mechanic for the guy who bought it new from the dealership. And 20 years later, got the opportunity to buy it back from him. Came in 40 boxes and just a rolling chassis. Dad was my hero. Very quiet, very stoic. But when he said something, you wanted to listen. He was an engineer and raced cars. We grew up at the racetrack. I hung out with Dad a lot. I was a daddy's girl. So we were in the shop and it was always showing me how to put something together or tear something down or rebuild a carburetor. Between my junior and senior year in high school, I blew out my knee. I was on crutches for 4 months and told me I'd never run again, the whole nine. D1 scholarships having been dropped, I went to Dad and said, Dad, can we rebuild the race car? So we did that and started racing autocross and ended up winning in the SCCA National Championship for FML, FMOD ladies. It wasn't the road racing of old that my dad had done and grew up on, but it was still a lot of fun. I miss it. If I could go run race cars again right now, done. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Looking at this car now, it's hard to believe that Jess's dad took possession of it while it was essentially in boxes. You see, the Pantera is a masterpiece of Italian design, and from an engineering perspective, it's truly something special. What's even greater though, is Jess's dad had the vision, wherewithal, and the talent to see past the trailer load of parts and take on the task of creating his dream car out of a vehicle that he'd known since it was brand new.
So I'm finally behind the wheel of Jessica Gray's 1971 DeTomaso Pantera, and I gotta be honest, the car is glorious. Now coming into it, I really didn't know what to expect. All I knew is that this thing was some kind of crazy Italian hybrid that I also grew up with as a kid. You've got amazing Italian styling, you've got a big Bulldog American V8 in the back, and then you got a transmission that comes from Germany. So like when I think about hybrids, this is what I'm thinking about, and this is the best possible kind you could hope for. When you look at the Pantera and you look at the styling, it's pretty amazing. So Alejandro DeTomaso basically started the company in 1959, and then the Pantera came out in 1971. But in order to get the Pantera to be sold in the United States, DeTomaso made a deal with Ford. A deal that basically meant that DeTomaso Panteras were sold through Ford Lincoln Mercury dealerships around the United States from 1971 to 1974. I need you to think about it like this. Imagine you're going into a Mercury dealership or a Lincoln dealership in 1971. On one side, you've got this massive Lincoln Continental, this big cush boat land yacht. On the other side, you've got a Mercury Comet or a Cougar. And then right in the dead center, this is staring at you. Talk about something that looked nothing like the American cars of the day. I mean, we had the Corvette and such, but my God, it didn't look like this.
It's interesting, but back in the day, no one would ever think to modify a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. But a Pantera? Well, that was a different story entirely. Maybe it was because it already possessed an oddball combination of parts from around the globe. Or perhaps it was that big 351 Cleveland that sat behind the driver. Either way, the DeTomaso Pantera was a hot rod from the factory, and most owners, Jessica's dad included, took full advantage of its hidden potential.
I think he was chasing the GTS look in the Pantera. So it's a 71, not the original front end nor the American spec, because ugly bumpers. But he's got the GTS front end, or the pseudo GTS front end, we'll call it. But he did some sauce to the back end of that thing. The motor, the transaxle, it's, you know, it's shiny, sparkly, but it screams. So he was chasing the muscle. Watching Dad's face light up when the car first got started up, it was money. You could tell he had found what he wanted, and it turned out what he wanted it to be.
This is a car for drivers. This is a car that will make you a better driver because it will tell you everything you need to know. Big American V8 in the back, 351 Cleveland. This Cleveland has been punched out a little bit. It makes about 500 horsepower. So if I kind of roll into it, make no mistake, the car goes, and it goes beautifully. There are no nannies. There are no anti-lock brakes. There is no traction control. The suspension is fully independent, and these cars do have a tendency to get lift throttle oversteer via like a 930 if you're not too careful. So you have to be on your wits. The steering is racket pinion. It's beautiful, it's tight, and it feels fantastic. I think in a car like this, I wouldn't want a full power rack because you lose that analogness. And for a car like this, that's exactly what you want. With that big carbureted V8 in the back, you know, you would expect it to be ungodly loud, but it's not. So the other thing is the gated shifter, right? It's a dogleg 5-speed, which means first gear is down and to the left, second up, down for third, over to the right, up for fourth, down again for fifth. It takes a moment to get used to because a lot of people are just gonna immediately start off in reverse. That's a bad thing. But otherwise, it's a brilliant configuration, and it's so much fun just to hear those click, 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 click through the gears as you're shifting, man. Checking on your vehicle before you jump behind the wheel is of the utmost importance, be it foreign, domestic, or the world's greatest hybrid like Jess's 71 Pantera over here. That's why the House of Muscle would like to thank Peak for their support, because from coolant to wiper blades to diesel additives and lighting, Peak has you covered. So does this thing qualify as a muscle car? This is not a car that I want to sit there and sling donuts with, and I want you to think of a Pantera like this. In the late 90s, early 2000s, resto mods started to happen, pro touring started to happen. And that's when you bolted on some decent suspensions, decent brakes onto a muscle car to kind of make it better. What DeTomaso did was they unknowingly created the world's best pro touring car 20 years before pro touring existed in the Pantera, because it is a muscle car with better suspension. It's everything that you would have done in the late 90s, early 2000s to make your muscle car better, except it's right here, and it's wonderful, it's glorious.
After Dad passed away, it sat in Kansas City in the garage going through lovely Kansas City heat cycles for quite a few years. It was always Dad's dream to kind of drive the car down PCH, and I brought it out to California. She looks like she's going fast, just sitting still. You're putting around 500 horsepower out on that. She likes to get out and go. So it's great. It's raw. It's just, puts you in a good mood. It's got a lot of flair and touches now from Dad that kind of just make it really special for us. His legacy, I'm just kind of taking care of it.
For Jessica, this car is part of her world. It's something that she grew up with. And the car totally pays homage to her dad. Think about going into your garage at night and your dad is working on this car. Think about looking up to him and what that must have been like. And then all of a sudden, he passes away. So now you have this amazing automobile that represents so much of your dad and what he loved about cars and what he was as a man. And you have to figure out what to do with it. Do you sell it? Do you let it languish? What do you do? Well, Jess did the right thing. She got the car. She brought it out to California. She kept tuning and wrenching on it. Every time she gets in it, there's a piece of her dad that's in the car with us. Drop a gear, put your foot down, and just laugh and have fun with the world's greatest hybrid. What an absolutely amazing day. I mean, we just spent the entire day driving the Pantera, and it just blew me away. Jess's dad had a vision. It's right here, and it's amazing. And it has the capacity to not only change your outlook, but everything that's going on around you. You know, to Jess, I just can't thank you enough for trusting us with this vehicle. It is just tremendous, and I can guarantee you that your dad is looking down at you and looking at this car and going, yep, pretty proud right now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the House of Muscle.